I was born in Puxico, and we moved to Elmo when I was about 3 years old. And Elmo and Scott City were two towns. I mean, Thornfeld were two towns. And they consolidated towns and called them Scott City. And so, lived in Scott City all my life. Well, my mother, she was a good cook. And she canned a lot. She made the best soup you ever ate, but just all around good cook. And we raised a garden, so it was food. She canned a lot, and most of our food come right out of our garden, and made all our clothes. I didn't have any. I wore overalls till I don't know how big, but what other clothes I had, she made them. And I don't know, that's about it, I guess. She just was a hard worker. My dad was a barber. He was they called him Barber. He cut my hair, of course, but everybody liked my dad. He was a little man, but he didn't take anything off anybody. And his brother Clifford was a big guy, and the only person that he was scared of was my dad. But he barked at anybody, but he didn't open his mouth to my dad. I don't know why. He just had a fear of him, or respect maybe. I don't know. He didn't respect anybody else. And yeah, and Clifford, his brother, was a gambler. He liked to play poker. Played pool for money, and it didn't work if he didn't have to. But my dad, he was a hard worker. Bonnie was she was just a happy-go-lucky young girl that she thought everything I did was funny, and Nina didn't like me a little bit because I pestered her, just anything to get her upset, and I was happy. Mostly I didn't like it. That's the truth. Yeah, I made passing grades, but I didn't do any more than I had to.
Yeah.
That's about it. I was working on a railroad, and I come in, and Joyce, my wife, she said, "Bob, your dad has been in terrible pain, and your mom can't get him to go to the hospital or a doctor." And I said, "Well, he's going. I'm going to go get him." So I called up her and I said, "Mom, I'm coming to get Dad. I'm taking him to the emergency room." And she said, "Well, Bob, he's resting real good right now, and he's not complaining." And I said, if anything happens, you call me. About 1 o'clock she called, said, Bob, you better get up here. Your dad is all over the bed. He's hurt so bad. So I rushed up there. I had a 4-door car. He was a little man. He weighed about 120, 30 pounds at the most. And I just picked him up. I knew I didn't have time to call the ambulance, because there in Scott City didn't have an ambulance. He used the undertaker, his hearse, and called guys out used it for ambulance. So I knew I didn't have time for that, and I picked him up and I carried him out to the car, his 4-door car, and his big car, an Oldsmobile. And I laid him in the back seat, and my mother was in the front seat. She leaned over the seat, and he was in such pain, and she was rubbing him as I drove up there. And we weren't getting too far from the hospital, the emergency room, and Dad said, Veer, you better tell Bob he's going to have to hurry. I said, Dad, I'm driving as fast as I can. And I was doing 100 miles an hour. And we went just a little bit, we were at the door of the Southeast Hospital. And I got them out there real quick, and it was 2-story. It was an old one. It was the old hospital. It was 2 stories, and they got him out of the car and got him in a ambulance or a bed, or whatever, and put him in the elevator, and he died in the elevator. But he knew he was dying. I never forgot that. And my poor mother, I had to take her home. She was heartbroken. Of course, I was too. Well, my mother, they lived in that old house up there that Dad bought, and worked on it all the time, and so where I lived there in Elmo, a lady by Miss Sitton had a trailer, and it was just across the street from me, and she had to go to a nursing home or something. Anyhow, that trailer come up for sale, and I bought it. And my mother moved in that trailer, and she loved that trailer. But anyhow, that's where she lived till she died. She had a heart attack, what she had, and she just, and pneumonia along with it, and she couldn't get over it. She died. Oh, well, I was, when I got out of high school, I went to work at Ely Walker is a garment factory. I was a sewing machine mechanic, and Joyce started working there, and of course I work on her machine, and got to knowing her, and she was really pretty, and all the guys that worked there wanted to go with her, but she went with me, and that was it. And we went together and decided to get married, and her dad and mom lived on a farm down Commerce, and we got married in their farmhouse in Commerce. We were married 36 years, and they were good years. She was a good woman. But she was just a good person, really good person. She never had a bad thought in her head. She was. I know people would think it'd be hard to believe, but we were married for 36 years and never had an argument. We just never had anything to argue about. Everything, you know, it was up to me, and everything with her was fine. So well, I couldn't have found anybody. I have. Since then, Wendy's the same way, but I was lucky. I was lucky. All the guys that worked there at the factory wanted to go out with her, but she chose me. She loved to fish. I'd come in from work sometimes, and there was a pond out there between Elmo and not Chaffee, but Commerce, that she would fish in it. I'd come in, she wouldn't be in the house. I knew where she'd be. She'd be out there. She'd be in water. She knew these favorite places. She'd be water almost up to her waist. Fish. She never kept them. She'd just catch them and take them off the hook. And if she'd have slipped and fell, she couldn't swim a lick. But I remember that. Yeah, and then we went to a place like a Horseshoe Lake, and we had never fished there, and there was a wooded area that the fishermen worked their way back in around those trees to fish, and there was quite a few fishermen. And when we come up, Johnny Flynn, he was working up the bank, and we went by him, and I stopped to just hold the boat there till I could figure out how to get in there. And Joyce threw her line over, looked like almost on the bank, and bam, she caught a fish. Got that in and threw another, and bam, she caught it. So I threw an anchor down, and I don't know how many. We didn't keep them, just catch them and turn them loose. But I don't know how many fish she caught right there. Of course, I caught some too, but she hit that spot. And Johnny Flynn, he come up there and he got his line in there once. He said, "I'm heading these other guys off." Because they could see what was going on. And she hit that hot spot. But boy, she caught about the fish. Boy, she was tickled to death. But she loved to fish. She was really a good kid, never had any trouble with her. And my mom and dad, they loved her. I remember Dad would come in from the shop and get out of the car and Tempa she knew she would be watching for him, and she'd run out the door, and he'd hunker down and hug her, and I can still see that. He wasn't. Dad wasn't very affectionate. I never had my dad hug me, but he loved Tempa, and she loved him. It was because she wasn't the least bit bashful with him. She just up there to him, and I could still see him hunkered down out there in the yard hugging her, and it made me feel good. Brenda loved cats. She still does. And she had one cat, first cat she got, that she would, of course, she had to sleep with her, but she wouldn't put him outside. And he had to do his thing. And I didn't have a litter box. That's a mistake I made. I should have had a litter box, but I was depending on her to put him outside. So it'd go. I just didn't like a litter box in the house. And that cat went on the carpet behind the couch. And finally, we went on vacation. We went to Daytona. We went to Daytona every summer. And while we were gone, the cat died. Or disappeared. It didn't die. I guess it died. Then animals go off. And we lived right next door to my father-in-law, and he was feeding her. And he said it was shortly after we left that the cat just disappeared. And I had to replace that carpet. It had mess on that carpet so bad that it stunk, you know. I took that carpet up. You could smell it in the wood. And I painted over that, I don't know how many coats of paint before I put another carpet down. And then I wouldn't let Gwenda get another cat. She wanted another cat. I wouldn't let her have it. You know what? He was a good kid. All of my kids were. Steve was a hard worker. He started mowing the yard when he was small. Plus, while he was in high school, he went to work at a grocery store in town. And he worked as a butcher. And everybody liked Steve. He just jokes with people and talked to them. He didn't just wait on them. And those people that owned it, they liked him like he was their own child. He was. Steve was a good kid. Well, all of my kids were. We like to go to Jackson to Webb's and eat their barbecue. That's our main thing. We both like them barbecues at Webb's, Jackson. Well, when we first got married, we moved into a little old apartment downtown, and we really liked it. But my dad, he had that lot by his house up there in Elmo, and he talked us in me into building a house on that lot. We got the lumber. Joe had big trees on his farm, and we cut that house was built out of mostly rough lumber, and I did all the work. Well, me and my dad, we built that house, 2 bedrooms. It was a small house. And later on, I built onto it. Towards the west. Anyhow, I built 2 rooms and another big room onto it. And then we lived in that till I bought that lot up in Elmo. And it was a rough looking lot. I took my dad up there to show him, where I was going to build this house. And it was rough. And he said, "Bob, there's no way you can build a house on this lot." But of course I had a bulldozer come in and they straightened it out and I built a nice house there. And we lived in that house. Joyce went to beauty school, and she got her license. And we opened a shop there in the basement, and had a walkout basement, a nice big parking area, and she did hair. But I never forget Dad saying, "Bob, there's no way you can build a house." But we loved that house. And then later, there was a outfit come in and bought the property right down below us and started building low-income houses. And I didn't want to. That's when I went out to Cloverdale and bought a piece of property and built that other house. And it was a nice house. Well, both of my houses were, but this one was brick. Had a circle drive, and the drive had like gravel. It wasn't just concrete, and it blended in with the house. And we lived there. Well, what I remember about that house mostly is my sitting room. We had a kind of a family room. Joyce come walking in there, and she said, "Bob, I love this house." And that stuck in my mind. I think of that a lot. And I've never regretted building that house because she did. She said, "I love this house." Well, the other house we had was nice. I had it built too. I had a guy in I can't think, Jackson. He was a contractor, built that house. And I had a guy on the railroad that he was a bully, he liked to bully people. And we was a bunch of us in the waiting area there, waiting to go to work, and he come in and "Bob, who built your house?" I told him. He said, "Yeah, he was that scabby son of a bitch from Jackson." And about that time, the crew had to haul him to catch the caboose. And I got on the engine And I thought about that all the way up there. And when we was there at East St. Louis, they had a place where we stayed. We called it the Beanery. And then this place where we could eat and we could sleep. And I was sitting out. There was a guy sitting on the porch. It had a front porch. And he was sitting on that porch on the step. And I come out and I sat down there. He said, "What are you doing out here?" And I said, "I'm waiting for that loudmouth conductor of yours." He said, "I'm getting out of here." And he did. So here he come from the yard office, and he saw me, and he knew something was up. So he act like instead of going to the Beanery, he was going to go catch the bus. You could catch the bus up there to go into town. And I headed him off. And I said, "Oh, come here, you loudmouth. Now tell me what you think." He says, "I'm going to shut your mouth up." And he said, "Oh, Bob, let's just forget it." He didn't want to have it. He was bigger than me, but he didn't want. He knew I was. If he'd have said anything, I was going to pop him good, and it would probably cost me my job. But I didn't care. But anyhow, after he said that, he said, "Oh, Bob, let's just forget it." And you know, where I lived there in Elmo, I lived on that street. It come this way and then curved. And I'd be out in the yard. I was out in the yard a lot. I didn't want any weeds in my yard. And I didn't like sitting in the house anyhow. Now, how many times he'd come by there while I'd be out in the yard, and he'd wave and say, "Hi, Bob." He did. I went to work on the railroad as a fireman, and shortly later I got promoted to engineer. And I had to work the engineer's extra board for several years before I got a regular job. And we had switch engines in East St. Louis that they couldn't get anybody to bid them in, you know. They worked them off the extra board. And I spent a lot of time in East St. Louis in that big yard up there on a switch engine. And go home, stay a week, get a week at a time. Deadhead, they called it. Get a deadhead for a week and go home, mark up, right back up there. Till I finally got seniority enough to get me a regular job. The best job I had while I was on the railroad is they put some trains on that they called them sprint trains. It was real hot merchandise that they went from the East Coast to the West Coast. And they weren't very big trains. They put a lot of power on them, and you could run 60 miles an hour. So they'd get on that train, and they gave you the right of way. They put all the other trains in the siding, and you zoom. It wouldn't be on duty very long, 2 or 3 hours. Them were good jobs, but they didn't last. They 2 or 3 years, and they started running those trains regular. A lot of difference, but we got spoiled. complain though. But for one thing, she liked to fish so well that while I was gone, she'd be fishing. I know she was really sick, and I was, of course, worried about her, but I never dreamed she would die. And the nurses, they didn't seem, well, the main thing about the nurses was she didn't feel like sitting up, you know. She was so weak, and I couldn't stay in intensive care with her at night. But as soon as at 8 o'clock was the earliest, they'd let me go in there. And I come in there one morning, and she was sitting in a chair with an oxygen thing over her, but she had her head way down on her shoulder. She wasn't getting any oxygen. And those nurses, 3 nurses was over there, weren't even paying attention to her, flirting with the doctor. And when I saw that, of course, I straightened her up and got that over her head, and I get over here. What's she doing sitting here in this chair like this? And she said, well, she needs to sit up. I said, she hadn't even sat up in bed, much less sit up here like this and nobody watching her. I said, look at her. The thing of it was, prior to that, her x-rays, I was tickled to death because her x-rays showed that she was getting better, and she had improved a lot. And it looked like she was going to make it, you know. Pretty sure she was. And after that, she went downhill just like that. Dr. Young, he was a doctor there in Elmo, and he was treating Joyce. And she was getting worse and worse. And I knew she was in bad shape. And, you know, things didn't look good for her, but I had hope. And so the nurses told Dr. Young that he needed to talk to me because Joyce just didn't look like she was going to make it. And they didn't want to tell me. They thought he could tell me in a gentle way to prepare me. So he called me and went in his office, sat down, and he said, Bob, Joyce is going to die. That was it. I got up, I couldn't say nothing. I just got up and walked out. Just like that, Joyce is going to die. But there wasn't any sense in her dying. If they'd actually always felt like they killed her by doing that. Just set her up in that chair and then forget about her. Yeah, that old hospital. I hated that hospital. Oh, how much I love her. How much I missed her. And And I do. Although, it's not, I love Wendy. And I'll be the same way about her. But, yeah. I'll tell her how glad I am to see her. After Joyce died, I was so lonesome. I didn't want to live. I thought about suicide quite a bit. But somebody told me about Parents Without Partners and encouraged me to go. So I looked into it and I started going. And that's how I met Wendy. She started coming. And we got to know each other real well. She was, so we got to caring. We cared a lot about each other enough that we got married. And it's the best thing that's happened to me because, as far as I'm concerned, I've had a good life since then. Even here. As long as I've got Wendy, that's all I need.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about that?
I think it's wonderful.
Well, I look at her and she gives me that smile, and that's all I need. She just, for one thing, she's just such a good person. She smiles about everything, and that smile makes me feel good. But
that is nice. Thank you so much.
It's just that we get along. We never had an argument. And we go to bed at night, and we got our beds pulled together.
Yeah.
And we got one mattress that covers both of them. And we go to sleep holding hands. And that's about it. It's always, don't take each other for granted. Be sure and tell each other every day that you love each other. And anything you do, try to enjoy it enough that you can put it in your memory to like this, pass it to your kids. But I've had a good life and two good marriages. So I've been lucky. We enjoyed our grandkids. That's about all I can say. And they seem to like being with us.
Happy birthday, Grandpa. Happy birthday, Grandpa. Happy birthday, Grandpa. 63, golly gee. Guess he better sing to you. Wow, you're gonna let me lick it.
Don't care if it's dog or dog. It don't seem like you all made that big a mess.
So I thought I'd make him a little Munchkin Land house. So let's go check it out. New, new, new. New, new, new. New, new, new. New, new, new. Hey, hey. What are you doing? I'm showing the cat house. Don't do anything. Here, see, that's what with the lights off. And there was the house with the lights on. Now shut the door right.
Apparently it didn't bother me that much. Well, we made biscuits and gravy every day. And Joyce made good biscuits. And gravy. Of course, we had eggs and bacon, that sort of thing, but biscuits and gravy was my favorite part. Of course, Joyce was crazy about her, and she was Joyce.
Grandma, did you have a good time at the party? Well, look at her hair. Why don't you model? Girl, can you go back?
Yeah, you like Casey. Casey, of course, was a good kid. And they just loved each other. I'd tell him, get up here and I'll watch it close. And then I'd slap that wire.